I want to talk today about tree nuts. Stick with me here. I was meditating yesterday and I pulled some cards right after. And one of the cards had a piece of wood on it. And I was drawn to look at the knot in the wood. And I knew because I was so drawn so strongly to this knot and like staring at it, there was a lesson there. So, I did my thing, looked like that cat on the computer. Um, and found out a little bit more about knots and tried to find what this teaching was that was trying to reach me. And what I got from this is a knot forms in a tree from stress or trauma, right? And every tree has knots. So every tree has experienced in its lifespan some sort of trauma or stress. And I try to figure out what this means in terms of self love, right? Knots are seen as imperfections, but every tree has them, right? So if we were to compare people to trees, every one of us has scars from trauma or stress, right? We all have these healed and grown over spots on ourselves, whether internally or externally, that speak to the things that we've been through in our lives. Now, these knots heal and bark grows over, and it doesn't impede the tree from growing. The tree continues to reach towards the sky, even though there's people running around saying, I don't like knots in my wood. I don't want, cabinets with knots and blah, 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 because they're seen as imperfections. But the tree doesn't care. The tree keeps striving to reach the sky, the sun, right? So, how I believe that this pertains to self-love is that we need to realize as people, and my counselor has said this to me before, right? Everyone has trauma. Everyone has trauma, and you cannot make decisions on whether or not to love somebody or love yourself based on that trauma and based on your scars. So you have to look at what your scars do for you, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. Your scars might not define you as a person, but they definitely speak to where you've been, how you got to where you are, and the beliefs that you have, right? And even though you have these knots, you have these scars, and there are people who will say you're imperfect because of these knots, you need to really look at what those experiences have done for you in order to love yourself. You have to look at the stress and the trauma that has happened to you in your life in order to love yourself. You can't just look at all of the good things about you, like, yeah, I'm pretty, yeah, I'm sweet, yeah, I'm whatever, right? You need to also look at the things that you've been through, the things that you've come from, and what you have healed to become the person that you are. Why wouldn't you love yourself? So what if you look imperfect because of your scars? So what if you don't act a specific way because of emotional trauma that's happened to you? Love yourself anyway, because everybody has trauma. And if we all only loved ourselves based on perfection and not having any knots or trauma, no one would love themselves. And this world would suck, right? It would be awful to live in. Not that it's not awful some days to live in anyway, but you get my drift, right? We still need to love ourselves, even though we've been stressed, we've been traumatized, and we've been scarred. And one more thing that I wanted to mention about this is sometimes a knot in a tree will rot and hollow out. Now that hollow spot in the tree becomes a home to other creatures, right? The same way that our imperfections, our trauma, healed of course, or healing, and our stresses and our past can become shelter for someone else. And it really can. And that's the importance to not only loving yourself, but sharing those parts of yourself that are seen as imperfect. Because imperfect or not, there are other people who are imperfect like you that need shelter inside another person who understands what they're going through, so that they can get to where you are, healed and nurturing others, right? Knots don't disappear once they've healed. They serve as a visual reminder. Our scars serve as a reminder of where we've been and what we've accomplished and what we've come through and our strength. So, it was a huge, like a loud reminder. Love yourself today as you are, with all your knots. Love yourself and keep reaching for the sky. And don't ever stop. Don't ever let anybody tell you that your imperfections should hinder your growth. Because if it doesn't hinder the tree, it shouldn't hinder you. I love you.